Well, thank you so much for staying with us this morning on the program. Let's talk about energy security, particularly with focus on making sure more Nigerians are out of darkness. Nigeria is often called the giant of Africa. It faces a daunting paradox, where we boast of abundant energy resources, but we also hold the grim title of the world's largest population without access to electricity. Now, we understand that Nigerians, we have about 86.8 million Nigerians, according to the World Bank, still living in darkness. Now, this staggering statistic underscores the immense gap between our potential and our reality. The enactment of the Electricity Act of 2023 makes it possible for state governments, for the first time in our history, to have the authority to regulate their own electricity markets. Of course, we know the 7 states, including Lagos, Enugu, and Oyo, are already leading the charge, crafting tailored energy solutions. Now, these hold promises, but they also hold what some consider cautious optimism. So let's have conversations around this morning, because we're asking the questions: how can Nigeria leverage this landmark policy to create a more inclusive and sustainable energy future? Engineer Franklin Omusi joins us this morning. He's an ISO 9001 trade lead auditor, renewable energy consultant, and MD CEO of Genesis Eco Power Systems. Thanks for joining us this morning, Engineer Omusi.
Thanks for having me, and good morning, viewers.
Good morning to you as well.
Nice to have you.
Yeah. First of all, your take on that report from the World Bank that 86.8 million Nigerians still live in darkness.
Yeah, that is the statistics we have. Even though the Minister of Power claims that we have over 150 Nigerians that have access to electricity, but you know the metrics are not very standard. But we should look at what the World Bank actually says, because they have a way of pulling the best data available. The problem we have in Nigeria is both access to electricity for the generality of the people. We have a problem with underserved Nigerians, where the electricity is available but is not sufficient. And then we also have a problem with the unserved. The unserved are those that don't have it at all. And that number is staggering, and is the highest in the world. For 3 consecutive years, we are the country with the highest number of low access to electricity. It's a big challenge, and a lot of things needs to be done by the government. It's not just policy matters alone. It is also the implementation, the style, and the steps to take. And I believe that if we're able to do what we should do as a country, we should be getting it right. 86 million is a large number. And you know, one of the core requirements of the Sustainable Development Goal, after the Millennium Development Goal, they came up with Sustainable Development Goal, access to clean energy, clean electricity. And I think in that area, we are failing so much.
But, just a second, and Omusi, if you can hear me, I hear you, and we hear the minister, but, I mean, you're the professional, you know how it flows in the market. But from this statistic of the World Bank, what do you think is the most critical factor contributing to this gap? Is it in our generation? Is it the transmission or distribution? Or there is more than that?
We have problem in all the areas. We have problems in generation, we have problem in transmission, we have problem in distribution. When they unbundled the PHC and made successive companies to come up, the amount of investment you need in generation, you almost need the same amount of investment in transmission. And our transmission lines are not so healthy and strong. Estimate says that Nigeria will need, on the average, 30,000 megawatts of electricity minimum to run a system that everyone has access to electricity. But our current generation is the highest we've gotten in this 2025 is about 5,800 megawatts. Look at that. That is less than 30% of our requirements. So for generation, we have a problem. And then for transmission also, we also have a problem because we're having a lot of grid collapse. In 2024, we have not less than 12 grid collapse in the country where electricity that is generated is not transmitted or distributed to the end user. And that is massive. For a period between 2017 and 2023, over 46 grid collapse because the grids are weak. There's not been any massive investment in the grid. So we have problem with generation, we have problem with transmission, and then we also have problem with distribution. So there need to be a rethink of the entire process. How do we ensure that our people have access to electricity? And let me say something. Electricity is big business. In some countries, they make lots of money from power generation and selling this power to those who use it. It's not free. So when we start looking at it from the business side, I think at that point, our approach will definitely maybe change.
Well, but Engineer Musi, if you can hear me, one wonders, the private sector is already playing a role, but let me quickly introduce another guest that's joined us, in the conversation this morning. Professor Yemi Oke is here in the studio with me. He is a professor of energy and electricity law. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
My first question to Engineer Musi is the World Bank statistics that puts the number of people living without electricity in Nigeria, living in darkness is the term used actually, 86.8 million Nigerians. That's staggering.
You want me to respond to that?
Oh, yes.
I'm not a fan of certain statistics bandied at Nigerians or for viewers. I would rather a realistic figure or statistic that shows clearly that certain number of Nigerians, 2 million, 3 million, 10 million, are in darkness. I must confess I have not seen the statistics. I only read snippet of it in the media. But that cannot be realistic. Honestly, that cannot be realistic.
Why do you say so?
Increasingly, because it talks about darkness, and I want to be fair now, and I want to also be very realistic because we play in this sector actively. An average home in Nigeria, when you talk of access, affordability, sustainability, you can't be talking about that kind of figure. But even in the rural areas, most rural dwellers now have something close to solar panels installed. You see Nigerians abroad sending solar panels to their parents in the rural areas, in the villages, just to light up the communities. And those communities can be in darkness. If you're talking of generated electricity, then is another thing. Those are talking of industrial stuff like the major grid generated and transmitted power. That's another thing.
So you think this data of the World Bank is not exhaustive?
Let's take Lagos as an example. Which part of Lagos is in total darkness? Tell me one community in Lagos that is in total darkness. That's no electricity at all. No, just tell me. Okay, leave Lagos. Talk about Ogun State. Which area in Ogun State, I'm talking of densely populated states in Nigeria now, is in total darkness? That they don't even have access at all. If you talk of insufficiency. I agree with that. If you're talking about, oh, people having access to 1 or 2 hours, or maybe minimal access, like basic access, like just in the night they have like their solar panels to light up some bulbs and the rest, and to charge their small radios. I understand that. But saying 86 million Nigerians are in darkness, that's fallacy. It's fallacious. I mean, I just started example. Okay, you go
but that's not to say that there aren't underserved communities in Nigeria.
If you're talking about underserved Nigerians or communities, my answer is yes. But it can't be 86 million.
Too much or too little?
86 million is about 5 countries in this continent. My goodness, that cannot be. I know we are challenged as a country in the power sector, no doubt. I regret the fact that it took us 15 years plus of consistency of advocacy to have a decentralized power structure. It started from those studios with Chamberlain and Mokwe. The clips are there online. It's been years of consistent, rigorous advocacy. We'll come here be reading what the Constitution says, that it was actually decentralized right from the onset. The current president is a victim of federal might in the power sector. Because as far back as 1999, power had been decentralized. But when we now had the Electric Power Sector Reform Act, then repealed, 2005, which now attempted to centralize the electricity sector, the power sector. So this is unconstitutional. There's a problem here, and we started the advocacy. States were supposed to play off-grid then. But now, of course, you expect that somebody who had been a victim of the power might, federal might in the power sector, getting on board. One of the things he did was graciously sign the Electricity Act because he was a victim himself. Now the states can play. And states are now, what we advocate, states should now start to identify and deploy their competitive advantage or advantages in the power sector.
But then the NERC, you know, is also concerned about their incapacity, their lack of expertise and all of that.
See, I don't want to undertake an advocacy for NERC. NERC is also a challenging institution. But I mean, if you are supposed to, when you privatize, the moment the federal government privatizes this sector, the only cognizable job of the federal government then and now, post-privatization and now, is effective sector governance and regulation. So you are now sitting here, can you beat your chest and say the power sector had been or is being effectively, conscientiously, seriously, prudently regulated? When we know what the players are doing, who's regulating, who's sweeping the players in line?
One wonders.
NRC cannot talk. It doesn't lie in the mouth of NRC, with all due respect to NRC, that the state don't have the capacity.
But do they?
State do. They are regulating. We just got back from Borno when we had the National Council on Power. We needed to see what states are doing. States like Enugu, Abia, Borno. I don't understand. Of course, we know. Enugu is almost self-sufficient in terms of regulation. We have a lot of states now playing. About 11 states have, of course, been given the go-ahead to start to regulate the power sector. It's predicted because we said these states are going to have something like Kondo State Electricity Regulatory Commission, Lagos State Electricity Regulatory Commission. That's exactly what they're having now. What we said will happen 15 years. Even what we said will happen as to the discos and gencos is already happening. Has been happening since. There's a huge debt overhang on the federal government because of the power sector in trillions.
Okay.
Particularly for gas. So, you know, states need to step in, and they have stepped in. They're gradually taking charge, and things are aligning as expected.
Okay.
But saying that the state don't have capacity, honestly, I would disagree.
Okay.
I would vehemently disagree with that.
Let me ask Engineer Musi, so I don't know if you agree with Professor Okay here in the studio with us. But let's look at one of the, I can also, we've also spoken about this for a while, about the implementation of the Electricity Act that empowers states to regulate their own electricity markets. We understand that 7 states for now, maybe others are coming with infrastructure or not, soft infrastructure to get those things done or not. That's one thing. But then the interface of the private sector players was with the federal government. Now it's going to be with the states. Do you see any challenges that need to be seen ahead?
Yeah, we know the Electricity Act and some of the policies that the government has come up with are actually designed to tackle these energy deficit we have. What I call underserved and the unserved communities within Nigeria. The policies are quite in order, but we are looking at a way where there can be great energy towards implementation of these policies. The private sector will definitely need to come in, but one of the challenges the private sector will always have, and which we find in the energy situation, electricity situation, is the right pricing. You know, private sectors, they are interested in profits. Do you have the right pricing for per kilowatt hour of electricity? If that is not fully addressed, because we know that right now for Band A, you have about 209 Naira per kilowatt hour. Is that really sufficient to take care of those who will invest in electricity, generation, and distribution? So the private sector will come in, but the right pricing has to be there. And then there need to be this decentralization, a situation where we have generation capacity between 12 to 14 megawatts, 14,000 megawatts, and we are generating about 5,800 megawatts presently. The difference is taken care of by the independent off-grid systems you have spread and scattered all over Nigeria, both in the solar space, solar PV space, and the small diesel generators and petrol generators. Now, those ones, government will need to continue to encourage them to play by bringing in more credit to allow Nigerians to generate their own electricity at that level and use it so that this gap can be closed up. That is an area where the private sector can also come in. And I believe that if we continue to do this on a consistent basis, there's going to be, the gap is going to gradually close.
Okay.
I've been to some communities within Nigeria. For instance, there's a community in Ogun State. They call it Bamu Bamu. They have no semblance of national grid, no grid line around there. But with the help of some private sector, they came up with a mini grid solution for the entire community. And that is working. And you have it scattered all over some places in Nigeria. So that is what I think. The right pricing for kilowatt hour of electricity is going to be a major challenge. And then government needs to invest in distribution system, the transmission. Because when you generate and you cannot transmit, a lot of what you have generated will be lost. Because the 5,800 highest capacity, delivered in Nigeria, it's not because of generation. There are a lot of losses on the line during transmission. So a massive investment has to be done by government to bring in, improve on the infrastructures, so that as we generate, we are able to transmit majority of what is generated so that we can reduce losses.
Okay.
So I think when government is able to do that, the private sector will flow in and fit.
So essentially you're saying, Engineer Musi, that the government, the public-private sector cooperation needs some work. I'd like to ask you, about that transition between the federal infrastructure supply system and the states. In the telecom sector, you know that we're having this battle of, what's the word that they use now? Path right of way. Okay, and all those things in the telecom sector. I don't know if you see a similar challenge between states for now, before the full implementation of the Electricity Act by the states.
Yeah, there is a bit of challenge, but that's not significant, because when you're talking about transmission, for instance, state A is regulating its own electricity, but the energy gets transmitted from 2-3 states through the transmission lines installed by the federal government. So how do you appropriate that? Where does your right start? Where does it end? Those kind of thing. Or am I entitled to these megawatts coming to me, or you are going to gap it? Those issues have been, those are technical issues that will be worked out. What we're even advocating is, like Engineer Moses said, extensive off-grid solution. And the reason why we're saying that, advocating that, even is part of what we call the decentralization thing. We have the mini grid solution that is also even mentioned a community in Ogun State that has no transmission lines installed. That's why I said the issue of 86 billion is fallacious. We have different kinds of arrangement put in place by state government to deal with it. When a state like Abia now, of course, they are almost going to exceed the transmission, national transmission lines, because they are not going to be self-sufficient. States like Enugu are looking at decentralized option, mini grid, extensive solarization, and other options. So we're looking at captive mini grid, mobile stations and the rest as solutions to this. So because the grid infrastructure is very weak, and it's going to continue to cost Nigerian government a lot of money to fix the transmission infrastructure. Is expensive. Now that states are hesitating to self-regulate, can you start or continue to talk about a kind of federated transmission infrastructure when states are already going their separate ways? So at best, we can have regional grid at the level of states that are willing to collaborate, and we're going to have extensive off-grid solutions. That's what we're advocating. If you put those power lines, you're going to have vandalism, issues of vandalism, because you're going to go down into the rural area. Who's going to monitor it? So we're talking about even deployment of technologies, drones, AIs, to monitor our transmission infrastructure, because it's under consistent attacks by criminal elements. Okay. So we don't want to avoid that for states. So states are now to look completely off-grid and look for off-grid solutions, mini grid, hybrid option, captive, and the rest. And
interestingly, the states, each one of them have different capacities.
You also mentioned something which is crucial, which we also need to amplify. An average investor will want to invest in any environment that is bankable. It's key. Bankability means ability to invest your money and recoup your investment with profit. I know investors are not as sentimental. They're not. It's not about sentiments for them. They can even invest in Sambisa forest if they will make profit. They're not bothered about certain things. They will factor in the security risk, certain risks. If investing in Sambisa forest will make commercial sense, you see both local and foreign investors going down there to invest. So, and that's the trend now. Those are the kind of benefits to be derived from the new electricity act, because states are now to play. You know, it's a situation in which you expect all rules in your state to be federal rules. The state will never develop. You can't expect federal government to build all
But
roads you need in
the
your
challenge
state.
is
The same thing
not,
for the power
yes,
sector.
I
So
understand
federal
that.
will play its role,
But
state will play its active
the
role.
challenge is, at the end of the day, there are some things that the federal government still has to, play a role in. For instance, we received this message from Chike, who says the elephant in the room on energy security in Nigeria is the devaluation of the Naira. Said the Naira's value makes everything ridiculously expensive, from equipment to maintenance. So how can we address the root causes and find solutions to a stronger Naira, particularly because most of the equipment that are going to be used for coming up with this stuff and maintaining them? Maybe, let me bring that question to you, Mr. Engineer Musi. The impact of Nigeria's currency on infrastructure that will be used by the federal or state governments to ensure electricity supply.
Thank you. For the exchange rate, it's, I think it's a general phenomenon that affects every sector, not just the electricity sector. So there's little anybody can do about that.
But the reverberation is that what happens as a result of that is it's what you bring in that it will determine the cost of electricity. You were talking about the cost the other time.
That is it. What you bring in.
So that raises the question of affordability, doesn't it?
What the cost of your electricity.
That raises the question, Engineer Musi, just a second.
And that is what affects investment coming in. Now, if government can take certain steps, I think it's in the new tax, I think the tax bill that was just released, that there are certain categories of electricity infrastructure equipment, solar equipment, that the VAT on them have been reduced to the various minima. I think some is even 0%. Now, if they implement that, they're going to find that the equipment cost is going to come down, and then it can make it a bit easier for Nigerians to be able to acquire what they need for these decentralized systems, off-grid systems. Look, for me, I feel that the best way for Nigeria to go, because the country is a massive entity, 36 states, with, you want to put investment into transmission lines, is going to go in billions of dollars. So why don't there be a focus on off-grid solutions? Government can come up with what I call tax credit regime to enable Nigerians, more Nigerians, acquire off-grid solutions. And before you know it, the number of Nigerians who have access to electricity would have increased. Especially, this low access is more in the rural areas. In the urban areas, we're talking more about underserved. But in the rural area, you have unserved communities. Yeah, they have the PICO systems, those systems for solar that is just for light. But lighting alone is not what you use electricity for. Use it for other phases of development. So if there's a focus on that, I think that will help a lot.
Okay.
If government can reduce the bill, like they remove VAT, and you also look at the import duty on those critical sector of the economy. For instance, electricity. Once you get electricity right, development has a tendency of spreading.
Okay. Well, Engineer Musi, thank you so much for that. Just 1 second. Perhaps to validate some of the issues you've raised, we received this mail from Kunle Atikpaja, and I'm going to direct this question, at you. He says, I would like to make reference to what your speaker said, that he does not know if there are areas that don't have light. As we speak, the following areas in Ogun State have been without light for the past 4 years. Areas like Ishaga, Emasai, Ijogorile, Ibeshe. I'm not sure if I got the names right, but those 4 communities said for the past 4 years, they've not had, electricity supply.
2 things. We're talking of unserved at all and underserved. It's saying, I mean, according to you, the statistics say people are in darkness. Imashai, Idogo, read it, because there's a communities I'm familiar with, you know.
Ijogorile,
Ijogorile,
yes.
Yes. Imashai,
Ibeshe, and Ishaga.
Ishaga, those cannot be, that cannot be true. When you talk of Ibeshe, that's where Dangote Cement is located. And I know Dangote has been doing a lot of community initiatives there, supplying solars and the rest.
But he said in Ogun State, Dangote Cement is in Lagos.
No, there's Dangote Cement in Ibeshe.
Oh, beg your pardon, Dangote Refineries, okay.
Dangote Cement in Ibeshe. I know the community is talking about that. Once you go on your way to Abeokuta, you veer off. It can be. They might say they don't have supplies from the IBDC, but on Disco. They may say they have problems with their transformer. Those are, but saying that in darkness cannot be true, because these are developed areas that a lot of homes have solar panels and the rest there. And they can't be in darkness. They may not have access to generated electricity. That's another thing. Grid-based electricity. That's another thing. Maybe they have 1 hour per day or whatever. That's a completely different thing. So those wouldn't come within the statistics being buried at Nigerians saying 86 million. I disagree with that. Good thing, the example cited is something I'm very familiar with. I know all these communities. There are schools there. There are businesses there. So they use diesel, they use generators there. So coming to the issue of exchange rate that you raised is a very important point. You know, when this privatization was done, Naira, I always cite that example because that was how we started here. It started, Naira was 160, 166 to $1. And then the investor didn't go offshore to bring money. They mop up dollars from the system. We don't want that to happen. We are not saying state government should dig their hands into budgetary allocation to fund the power sector. No. Government has no business in the business of the power sector. It's self-sustaining because it's real business that could be lucrative if properly managed. States should stimulate investment, upgrade solution, extensive solarization. And we started seeing the policy direction. Government says, oh, you know what, we can't be importing solar panels into Nigeria. We have capacity in this regard. Let's start to assemble those solar panels so that we start to do things. That's what we are saying. We're scaling up our manpower, our local capacity in this regard. Then, if you want to invest, say the current exchange rate is favorable to investors. Because if you want to invest in the power sector in Nigeria, all you need to do is to access like a few $1 million and it's a lot of money to invest in Nigeria. If your currency is too strong, you're going to make your environment not as competitive because investors are going to preference other locations for that kind of investment. So
okay.
That is, you know, it's a kind of a sword when you talk of the implications of the exchange rate. Yes, it's a plus for investors because few dollars means so much here to invest, and you should see investment coming down ordinarily. And that's why we are saying the state government, the respective state government should start to reach out, repackage their structure, create a kind of bankable framework that will make investors to come and invest in the, and they can regulate. Yeah. They can talk about agreed tariff, feeding tariff and the rest. I mean, if you have a community, they say, okay, give us electricity we are willing to pay. Work out the mathematics of the tariff. It's still going to be cheaper for them in the long run to generate, as against generating via this. Those are the kind of things we're saying. Okay.
Well, there's this comment from, by the way, you also can join in the conversation this morning. You know, the access routes are right there on your screen on X, and you can also send us a quick email. Pastor Law Alpha Cross has this one, Engineer Musi. It says, if there be half of power supply in all parts of Nigeria, as we have in Abia State today, courtesy of Dr. Oti's proactiveness and resourcefulness, one won't believe this, that such humongous number of people are denied electricity across Nigeria. And both of you have been speaking this morning about the quantum of resources available to the states, the capacity that they have now.
Exactly.
The only question is, how optimistic are you, Engineer Musi, that the states will actually take the gauntlet? The capacity is there now, at least the law is there now, it's active, and more states, a lot more resources go to the states now, courtesy of, you know, the federal government and this new administration. So what are your hopes about the capacity of the states to deliver electricity and an increasing number of capacity to their people?
We always have to be optimistic. If one state has done it and is working, and other states are key in, we see mentioned about 7 other states are looking at that, at their state, Enugu state, then we have to think that others will gradually follow. And because we live, our system is a democracy, the electorate will now start making those points as core issues when people come to campaign for election, in terms of are you going to provide us electricity? If it now becomes campaign issues, so those states who are not key in will gradually key in. And I believe that is going to happen. One state has tried it and is working, others are coming in, and I'm sure others are going to join in. Because it's a win-win situation for everyone. If you have a well-developed state, environment, your people are happy, it makes things better for governance, your tax increase, the level of insecurity will drop, people are gainfully employed.
I want to take you up, my apologies, Engineer Musi, I want to take you up on that electricity bit. Is the protection of the infrastructure. Professor Oke alluded to it a little bit earlier. You know, is the protection of the infrastructure that I would like you to also speak to, because we've heard stories, right, of people, as soon as they are done, installing, there are some people right just around the corner waiting to go and vandalize these things, break them into pieces, and, you know, they are too much in a hurry to just cannibalize what has just been installed for the entire community. So, what will be your proposal to states in that regard?
Well, it's because of the poverty level. Now, when those kind of projects are done, the communities have to be involved. There has to be a buy-in in the community, so that the community acts as part of the system of protection for the infrastructures. Those who steal and vandalize them, they don't understand the nexus between what has been installed for them and how it affects their life.
It goes to communication.
The immediate gain. So there has to be a lot of education. There has to be a lot of communal involvement. Community have their vigilante, they have their own development association. And when you engage them in deploying some of these solutions and these interventions, they will understand that, look, if this thing is vandalized, it's going to be to our own detriment. So they have to inculcate it into their people.
And now, ensure that they take ownership of it.
Reduce poverty.
My apologies, Engineer Musi. Well, it speaks to poverty. I heard you there. But let me, because, more messages are coming in and we have a little over 10 minutes. Professor, okay, this one is for you. Bolahon is tackling you. He says, while all these off-grid solutions can help expand access to electricity, they may not be able to drive industrialization. Power for industrialization requires a separate plan. So we must be careful. We must carefully define the problems and design the solutions accordingly. Solar won't power Dangote refinery.
See, this is this. Let's get it. Electricity demand and requirement is in phases. Industrial, homes, basic. So altogether, we look at access. In Abia, that everybody is celebrating now, where we should have been where we are now, almost 2 decades ago. Why? I always say this so that we can arrest our conscience as a country. if we had allowed the experimental Lagos Enron thing to happen in 1999, 2000, now, hindsight, 25 years later, what would have happened? We'll have had Lagos as far back as 20 years, which Tinubu started then before it got frustrated. As we were able to allow that to scale through. We are celebrating Abia now. Enugu is following. If we had had Lagos, then we'll have had Ogun, Enugu, Bayelsa, Kogi, Kwara. We'll not be talking of that now. So it's never too late to start. That's why the enabling law is there to make us start. We are not talking of solar in Abia, because what you have in there is for home, industry, and everyone. We're talking of scaling up capacity. We're talking of enabling the states to get involved. We are talking of manpower now. Is that lack of manpower in Abia? Are you saying there's lack of manpower in Ogun or Lagos? Or is it Enugu that is already getting set? Or is it Ondo Akure? Is it Kano, Kaduna? There's no lack of manpower in the state. So what we need is the will. And government should just step in. Then again, you talked about an important point which I want to amplify. As much as we need responsible leadership, we also need consensus, responsible followership. Once those electricity power assets are installed, is it the governor or the president that goes to vandalize? Those are the issues.
So
now,
essentially, states.
There is a lot of Nigerians still bypass a lot of energy theft, electricity theft. Is it the governor? Is it the president?
It goes back to my apology.
It's not poverty now.
Yes.
The rich men do bypass. It's not about poverty. I disagree when engineers.
Well, yes. Okay, I hear that.
Rich people bypass.
I'm talking about the poverty issue came up in the area of the vandalization.
Yes.
I'd like to take you, Engineer Omusi, on the topic about renewable energy, but we'll come to that one. Let me ask you, Prof, about nuclear energy. It's a source, right? And I know that we have at least one or two agencies in Nigeria, exploring opportunities. And recently, Nigeria was part of some nuclear energy conversation in other parts of the world, somewhere in Europe recently. So, does Nigeria have that potential, that capacity?
We do. To be honest with you, we do.
Federal, states?
Federal, especially, we're not ripe yet. Because the energy is something you can generate from virtually anything and everything. Landfill, renewable, from dump site. From forest, we have debushing technology that can generate energy from forest. If it rains, hydro. If you have sunshine, solar. If you have strategic windfall, windmills. So we have strategic options that we can deploy as against going into nuclear immediately. We have the potential. Fine, let's grow the avalanche of options that we have to a reasonable extent. Then we can top it up with nuclear at some point, because the vulnerability level of improper handling of nuclear could be disastrous. So I don't think, because in a situation in which we have criminals vandalizing transmission cables, transformers, if they attempt to vandalize nuclear power plant with nuclear radiation. Because Nigerians, even the rails, the handrails, the metal or aluminum handrails on bridges and flyovers, they cut it off. So you don't want to even go in there. We can't even go nuclear. We have the potentials, but I don't think I trust the sensibility of some Nigerians to be able to not mishandle it.
Yes, Jide is speaking perhaps in that area. It says, in my opinion, we have the money to buy or build another power grid in this country. More so, the way our houses and roads are built does not encourage any government to adequately build, access, and provide almost anything to its people the way we build houses in Nigeria. So he was also talking about emergencies, even for security. Okay, the way we build houses in Nigeria makes it difficult, even for security emergencies, and vandalism is a small thing. We have a lot of unemployment in the country, and that creates a job opportunity for people. once there is light in our country, everything else will, with price hike, would crash all over the nation. Well, Engineer Musi, let me ask you that question about renewable energy. There's a bouquet of opportunities, and I'm pretty sure you will agree with Professor Oke here. So how do we manage that? How do we help people to see these opportunities in a way that it doesn't alter anything, rather it is more proactive? Particularly, we talked about, you spoke the other time about the fear of, vandalization and all those things. My worry is, at the end of the day, how do small businesses benefit from the plethora of opportunities that exist in the power sector?
Thank you very much. I would first want to just quickly agree with Prof. that with all the options available for electricity generation, we should just keep the nuclear option, providing electricity through nuclear power. We should just leave that for the meantime and focus on the ones that is available for us: hydro, thermal, solar PV, solar CSP. There's so much to do. There's so much available for us in the solar PV space. There's solar PV, there's solar CSP. And the beauty of it, of the solar system, especially the off-grid solar home systems and the mini-grid, but especially the solar home systems, is that you generate, you transmit, and you distribute within the same environment. And that can be a very important solution that government should key into. The challenge with most Nigerians is that it's not affordable. I think that is where government can come in, the states. You see, because when you invest in that particular area, you reduce the pressure on the national grid, because people will not be depending on that rather than waiting to get power from the national grid. Government should provide, well, a serious intervention system. They call it an agency or a bank, like you had People's Bank of those days, where people can access funds to invest in getting solar home systems for their businesses.
Okay.
These artisans, barbers, and all those shops. And when you are able to do that, you empower Nigerians. That is where true empowerment comes in.
Okay.
And the other vices that go on in the society will gradually just start, going down. So I think there's a lot to be done in the PV space. And let me also add, PV solution is not just limited to solar home systems. We have solutions for hotels and industries. I've done solutions for hotel, and there was a gradual transition from using a diesel generator to depending on the solar system. So if you have people thinking about that, there are solutions for factory. I have a factory in Anambra State. It's a metal processing factory. They depend solely on solar PV systems. They have massive inverters with batteries, and over 8 to 1.
So essentially, the opportunities are there, Engineer Musi, and that's actually quite gladdening. But there is this recommendation, Prof, that Obakwalo is making. She says, please tell the National Assembly to promulgate a law against the sales of second-hand electrical materials in Nigeria, so that whoever is found selling it will go to 25 years imprisonment. Or else they will not stop.
No, see, honestly, we have laws in place. Even we have NEMSA. NEMSA is in charge of all those stuff. And NEMSA is the one dealing with that. But honestly, let's also be fair to ourselves as Nigerians. When we talk of our installed capacity of the national grid is below 5,000 because it's weak, it's dilapidated. But the actual amount of electricity that we regenerate in the country is significant, because we need to have a kind of a global view of what is generated.
So then the government itself is not doing that job.
In your homes, I'm sure you generate too.
What am I generating?
You generate electricity in your home.
How?
Through your generator, your solar, your inverter. So if you cumulate...
Must I generate? I pay tax.
So I understand. So what I'm saying is, let's have a kind of global view of where we are and start to fix it. the way to go is not grid-based generation, distribution, or transmission. The world is going off-grid, actually. The world is going off-grid. So we have to start to tap into those alternatives and options and maximize them. With that, it becomes easily accessible and affordable over time, because it's a question of willing buyer, willing sellers. Of course, nobody forces you to go and buy an inverter or those batteries. Now we want to scale up battery production in Nigeria. We want to scale up solar panel production in Nigeria. Those are we're developing from within, and then funds are out there. Even at the National Conference on Power, you needed to see the MDO ratification saying, hey, they have funds in billions of dollars. Nigerians are not accessing because they are not meeting the conditionalities. So going to the space, get something done in the power sector, off-grid solutions, essentially. All the states are willing, looking for people to come to their states and invest. And I can tell you on here, most of the states are looking for investors. There was another, I cited that example recently, who is doing something in Iseyin in your state.
Well, if there is so much money and the states are not accessing it, don't blame.
There are foreign funders, foreign funders are there, local funders are there. It's business.
Exactly.
So it's business. It's not.
So the states should go and access it and provide electricity for their people.
Self-sufficiency. So there is go and access money and invest. Then
this is a whole new conversation you want to start, Prof. Let's not even start it, because there will be questions around how come they are unable to access it, and if they are unable to access it, how difficult or is it are the conditionalities? Exactly. But anyway, we'll speak to that some other time. Thank you so much this morning, Professor Yebi Oke, a professor of energy and electricity law, as well as engineer Franklin Omosi, who is an ISO certified lead auditor, renewable energy consultant, and MD CEO, Genesis Eco Power Systems. Thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of this conversation today.
Thank you.
Well, I mentioned to you the other time, I mentioned to you the other time that the federal government has signed these 4 new laws, tax laws, and I asked, what do you stand to gain? Okay, this next conversation you can be a part of, and you can ask questions through all of the links that you see on the screen when we return from this break.